Hello friends, I welcome you to the lecture number 31 of the course title Psychology of Stress, Health and Well-being. So, today we will start module 11 and the focus of this module and the upcoming module, that is last module, module number 12 will be to discuss specific concepts related to eudaimanic well-being. These are the concepts which are beyond just happiness and emotional emotions. So, in today's lecture, we will talk about the concept of self-actualization from the perspective of humanistic psychology. So, before we talk about today's lecture, I'll just briefly, summarize some of the things that we have discussed in the last lecture. So, in the last two modules, that is module 9 and 10, we have been discussing about various happiness enhancing strategies or strategies that has the potential to increase your experiences of happiness in your life. And we have discussed specific strategies such as practicing gratitude, acts of kindness, using signature strengths and flow experiences. So, in the last lecture we specifically talked about the concept of flow and what are the characteristics and how it can be fostered. So, we have discussed the concept of flow as an intense experiential involvement in moment to moment activity, where attention is fully involved in the task at hand and the person is at his or her fullest capacity in terms of functioning. And we have discussed that mostly the experiences of flow, which is intense involvement with the task, happens mostly when under the condition of high challenge and high skill task. So, where there is a challenging task and you also have high skill, where skill needs to be little bit stretched in terms of challenge. So, in those conditions flow experiences happens, and flow experiences mostly happens for the activities in which we are mostly intrinsically interested. We have discussed various characteristics of flow such as intense focus, loss of reflective self consciousness, merging of action and awareness, distortion of temporal experiences and so on. And also we have discussed what are the various consequences of flow, and mostly the research indicates that flow experiences are associated with many indicators or positive indicators of well-being and performance. And at the end we have discussed some of the interventions to foster flow experiences. So, these are some of the things that we have discussed in the last lecture. Today it is a new module and the focus is going beyond just happiness and emotional experiences. Idea is to look at eudaimanic well-being, which we have discussed in one of the earlier lecture, which talks about well-being beyond just emotional and transitory experiences in terms of various ideas such as self-actualization, meaning in life, etc. So, today's lecture will be devoted on the concept of self-actualization, and we will try to understand self-actualization from the humanistic psychology and more specifically from the theories of two important humanistic psychologists, that is Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. So, this will be the focus of today's lecture. So, the concept of eudaimanic well-being, we have discussed a little bit about the concept of eudaimanic well-being in one of the earlier lecture. It is I think in the lecture number 17. So, the idea I will just briefly summarize again what is the idea of eudaimanic well-being. So, the idea is happiness is enough for good life. So, for good life happiness is very important, and it is very important ingredient in terms of experiences of life, there is no doubt about, particularly when we talk about happiness in terms of emotional experiences. The literature of happiness and subjective well-being seems to be concerned with mostly feeling good or in terms of experiences. However, many researchers argues that true value of well-being and quality of life cannot be just understood in terms of emotional experiences. There should be many important other ingredients which makes life a good life. Should consider concepts such as meaning and purpose in life, realizing one's inner potentials and fulfillment in life, etc. So, eudaimanic concept is specifically about these concepts which are beyond just emotional experiences. So, in lecture 17 we have already discussed some of the basic ideas of eudaimonic well-being and how it is different from the concept of subjective well-being or happiness. So, according to eudaimonic well-being, the concepts of well-being, well-being consists of more than happiness. It is more about actualization of human potential. It is about fulfilling one's true nature and diamond. So, it is more in terms of functioning, in terms of long term, in terms of future oriented goals. So, well-being is conceptualized mostly in those terms. So, eudaimonic well-being conceptualize well-being in terms of positive functionings. Functionings plays more important here than experiences. Meaning in life and pursuing worthwhile goals, actualization of inner potential and so on. So, these are some of the important indicators of eudaimonic well-being. So, the core idea of wellness is not how pleasant or unpleasant one feels, but how one functions in response to life challenges. So, focus is given more or emphasis is given more on functioning aspect rather than just emotional experiences. So, this is another important aspect of well-being, without which we cannot understand the term well-being in a holistic sense. So, in technically in the literature of psychology, eudaimonic well-being is called as psychological well-being. So, when the word psychological well-being is used in the literature of positive psychology and specifically, it connotes the idea of eudaimonic well-being, whereas the word subjective well-being is mostly concerned with the concept of hedonic well-being or happiness or emotional experiences. Mostly in that context the word subjective well-being is used. Psychological well-being is used mostly to connote the idea of eudaimonic concepts of well-being. Carol Reef and her colleagues, they proposed 6-dimensional model of eudaimonic well-being or psychological well-being, which is quite popular and many people use their model to measure eudaimonic well-being. In their model they talked about 6 important dimensions of eudaimonic well-being, and these dimensions are self-acceptance, personal growth, purpose in life, positive relations with others, environmental mastery and autonomy. We have discussed some of these ideas in some of the earlier lectures. So, we will not go into too much in details about all these ideas. Some of these already we have discussed and few more we will discuss in upcoming lectures. So, there are many theories that conceptualize human well-being in terms of eudaimonic well-being. So, there are many theories that talks about eudaimonic well-being. We will focus today more on theories of self-actualization from humanistic psychology. We will also talk about concept of self-determination theory in the upcoming lectures, the concept of meaning and purpose and life goals. So, these other concepts will be discussed in the upcoming lectures, but today we will specifically focus on the concept of self-actualization, specifically from humanistic theories. So, let us briefly look into the basic idea of humanistic psychology, and their idea of self-actualization. Now, humanistic psychologists, most prominent among them are Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. So, and we will discuss the theories of these two particular humanistic psychologists. They were probably first eudaimonists in the 20th century. This humanistic psychologist focused a lot on these eudaimonic ideas of well-being. Even before the positive psychology came into the picture, they were the people who talked about well-being in terms of various eudaimonic concepts, particularly the concept of self-actualization was given a lot of emphasis in their theories. So, humanistic psychology emerged in 1960s mostly as an opposition to pessimistic conceptualization of human nature by psychoanalysis and behaviorism. So, humanistic psychology is also called as third force in psychology, primarily because it emerged as a particular approach of study of human beings in opposition to psychoanalysis and behaviorism. Primarily because psychoanalysis is very pessimistic in terms of looking at human nature, because the basic idea of psychoanalysis is that human behavior is governed by unconscious forces or unconscious mind, which is full of a lot of aggressive and sexual instincts, and human beings are mostly governed by those dark forces in the unconscious mind. So, there is a sense of pessimism in terms of very deterministic idea of human nature in psychoanalysis, where behavior is governed by unconscious unseen forces. Behaviorism, on the other hand, mostly focuses the human understanding human nature in terms of understanding stimulus response reaction, that human beings are mostly the victims and pawns of the environmental stimulus. So, according to whatever learning and conditioning that will happen from the environment, the human beings will become accordingly, their nature will be shaped accordingly. So, these two ideas or approaches of human nature or study of human behavior are very deterministic and to some extent pessimistic. So, as a response to these two schools of thoughts, humanistic psychology emerged in 1960 to talk about the important positive dimensions of human behavior, which were not given emphasis at all in other schools of thoughts. So, humanistic psychology offered some new sets of approach to study human beings. Some of their core assumptions are that people are motivated to self-actualize their inner hidden potential. So, one thing is that there is an inner motivation among all human beings to actualize all of their hidden potentials. This motivation is there in all human beings. Whether somebody is able to reach there or not, that is a different question, but this motivation is there among all human beings, that we all want to make best use of our life and flower in the best possible way. So, that is the meaning of self-actualization. We will talk about self-actualization in detail. So, this is the inner motivation that is present in all of us. Human beings have free will. So, this is one of the idea which is different from psychoanalysis and behaviorism, who did not accepted this idea of free will very clearly. So, humanistic psychologists talked about the concept of free will, that human beings have free will and they can determine their life, choose their life and shape their life in whatever way they like. So, this the concept of free will is given a lot of importance. They also talk about human being make active choices that influences their well-being. So, this is connected to free will. So, we can make choices, actively choose, consciously choose pathways in our life and make decisions which will influence our life. And another important idea of humanistic psychology is that human beings are basically good intrinsically. So, intrinsically at the core of all human beings are actually good, in terms of, because at the core of human beings all the positive qualities are there, love, compassion, all these qualities will flow when people really touch their core of human being. So, intrinsically all human beings are good in terms of in terms of nature. Because of so many other conditioning, obviously in terms of behavior people may show many negative behaviors, that is not in conflict with this idea. Intrinsically at the core all human beings are good in nature. So, this is another idea. So, these are some of the ideas, and you can very clearly see these ideas has a very important very positive assumptions of human life, that human beings have free will, they can make choices, they can determine their life, they can actualize their potential, they are basically good in nature. So, all these ideas were kind of radically different from ideas of other schools of thoughts, and for the first time that talked about all these important positive qualities of human beings which were neglected in other schools of thoughts. So, this is the brief background of humanistic psychology that emerged in 1960s, and prominent among them were Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers and many other psychologists. So, we will talk about this Maslow's theory as well as Rogers' theory, and we will try to understand the concept of self-actualization from these two theories in order to understand this eudaimanic idea of self-actualization. So, Abraham Maslow is known for giving a theory called hierarchy of needs, that human beings, he proposed that we all have a hierarchy of needs. So, there is so many needs and all these needs can be arranged in a hierarchy. So, Maslow noticed that there is a hierarchy among our needs. Hierarchy basically means some needs take priority over others. So, there is a hierarchy means one is at the top of others. So, for example, if one is hungry and thirsty, quenching of thirst will be priority as thirst is stronger need than hunger. So, there will be more stronger needs and weaker needs. We will try to fulfill stronger needs first and then we will go to the other needs which are not so strong. So, for example, when we are hungry as well as thirsty, we will try to first fulfill the need of thirst or quench the thirst because it is much more stronger need. So, like this human beings have so many needs and he kind of arrange all these needs in a hierarchy according to their nature and according to what he observed in human life. So, based on this idea, Maslow created a hierarchy of needs for human life, and these needs are mostly represented using a pyramidal structure. So, we will see what is this structure, and the lowest level of the pyramid includes most basic needs. So, at the lowest level comes the most basic need, and as we go higher in the pyramid, we have more refined and complex and psychological needs. So, let me draw his pyramidal structure of human need. So, at the base are basically base of the pyramid consists of physiological needs. Then come safety needs, then comes love and belongingness, need, then comes esteem need, at the top comes self-actualization need. So, he presented as a kind of pyramidal structure which is something like this. So, this is the need hierarchy model of Maslow. So, at the foundation of this pyramidal structure, when we say show something in the pyramidal structure, what is the meaning of this is that so there is a hierarchy. So, there is a foundational needs, and as we go, so there is more needs which are less foundational, and if you see in the pyramid the base is largest. So, that means highest number of people are in those needs. As we proceed higher needs, less and less number of people will be kind of focusing on those needs. So, that is also another idea of pyramidal structure. So, physiological needs basically include need for things such as need for food, water, sleep, etc. So, physiological need basically includes need for taking food, water, sleep. So, those are related to our biological survival. So, physiological needs are most fundamental because these are survival needs. Without that we cannot survive. So, in that sense these are foundational need. So, this is the most fundamental need, and human beings will try to fulfill those needs at any cost because these are important for our survival. So, we will first everybody tries to fulfill these basic physiological needs before fulfilling other needs. Then comes safety needs. So, once the idea of hierarchy means once you fulfill the basic need, then you proceed to the next need. So, once we fulfill our physiological needs, we try to fulfill our safety needs. So, safety needs is about in terms of needs that needs to feel protected, safe. It includes creating safe circumstances, stability in life, protection from threats, etc. So, these are all safety needs. So, for example, we save money for future, we take insurances, these are all coming from the safety needs. So, that we have a secure future life also. So, these are coming from the safety needs. So, once we fulfill safety needs, we proceed to, or we try to fulfill the next higher need, which is the need for love and belongingness. This is now coming to more emotional and the psychological level. So, love and belongingness needs include basically things like need to have friends, family, sense of community, etc. So, need to belong to a family, need to belong to a society, need to belong to a group, friend circle, whatever it is. So, basically it is about our need to connect with people. So, this is a very important need. Once we fulfill those love and belongingness needs, then we try to fulfill the next need, which is called as esteem need. Esteem need is very more psychological and need basically related to our self-esteem, sense of worthiness. So, it includes needs related to accomplishment, prestige, getting respect, competence, freedom. These are all connected to esteem needs. So, we want to feel worthiness, we want to feel that I have a worthy life, I have a respect. So, whatever we do in order to make our life worthy, basically these are coming from the esteem needs. So, esteem needs again may have some internal aspect and external aspect also. So, many esteem needs are fulfilled from the outside, such as getting respect and prestige. This is always given by someone else from the outside, and there can be an internal aspect of self-esteem when you have things like self-respect, which is about yourself. How do you feel? Feeling competent, feeling freedom, these are coming from inside of yourself. So, mostly these are called as inner self-esteem, and outer self-esteem is mostly when you feel sense of worthiness from outside people, in terms of getting prestige, respect, etc. Once we fulfill this esteem need, then at the end or the highest level of need that human being kind of pursues is called self-actualization, which is a need for self-development, and growth. It is about, so self-actualization is highest level of need. According to Maslow, all the other needs are called as deficit need. Only self-actualization is called as being need. Why it is called? Because all the other needs are basically all this need arises because of some deficit in the environment. So, if you are not getting food, so the hunger arises. If there is an issue with the safety and security, then need for safety arises. So, it always comes from the external circumstances or external aspect or environment, some deficit in the external environment, all this need arises. However, self-actualization particularly is a need that is not connected to external deficits, but it comes from within human being, that there is an inherent motivation within all of us to grow and expand and express all our hidden potentials. So, it is not something related to external world, but it is there is an inner need for expressing our hidden potentials, actualizing all our hidden potentials, or to grow and expand in our life. So, though that need is called as self-actualization need, and therefore, it is called as being need, because this need is the need of being or internal internal need. All the other need comes from some deficits in the environment. So, we will see a little bit more about this concept of self-actualization. So, this is briefly about what the need hierarchy model of Abraham Maslow. So, briefly let us go through this these needs again. So, physiological needs, as we have already said, it is the bottom of the pyramid, and these are most basic physical requirement, include need for food, water, sleep. Our survival depends on the fulfillment of these physiological needs, as we have already said. These are most fundamental and basic needs. Safety needs is basically concerned with when physiological needs are taken care of, the need for safety comes into the play. It includes finding safe circumstances, stability, maybe financial security, protection, insurance, etc. This need comes from the desire to have a control and order in life, desire and control in order of life, present as well as future. So, these are all safety and security needs. Love and belonging needs when the other two needs are fulfilled, physiological and safety needs are when largely taken care. This need starts to show up. Then people start to explore basically in terms of social life, in terms of getting connected with other people, and they have a need for getting friends, family, children, affectionate relationships, sense of community, etc. Esteem needs, as we said, it is mostly comes into the play when physiological safety and love and belongingness needs are largely satisfied. It is about feelings of accomplishment, prestige and respect. Maslow talked about two versions of esteem needs, a lower esteem needs, which is also called as outer esteem needs, and a higher esteem need, which is also called as inner esteem needs. So, the lower or the outer esteem needs include respect from others, because it comes from outside, that is why it is called as outer esteem needs. The need for status, fame, glory, recognition, attention, reputation, appreciation, dignity, dominance, all these things comes from the outside world, therefore, they are called as outer esteem needs. The higher or the inner esteem needs includes need for self-respect, including such as confidence, competence, achievement, mastery, independence and freedom. These are all things that comes largely from within yourself. So, this part of esteem needs could be can be included under being need also. So, because it comes from within us to have a sense of self-respect, confidence, it is not exclusively dependent on others' reaction, but it is how you feel about yourself. So, let us discuss now the concept of self-actualization. So, at the very peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are basically self-actualization need, as we have discussed earlier. This term was first used by another person named Kurt Goldstein. However, this was popularized by Maslow. Maslow was not the first person to use this term self-actualization. Goldstein uses this term first, but Maslow popularized this through his theory. So, self-actualization needs are met when an individual engages in self-development and personal growth. So, when you are focusing on your self development, your personal growth, or actualizing all the hidden potentials, then you are engaged in self actualization, need fulfillment. Maslow said, what a man can be, he must be. That is the what is the meaning of this idea is that whatever potentials are there within a man, he must actualize that in order to become fully realize his all potential, in order to become fully what he is born to become. So, Maslow explained, referring to the need of people to have achieved their full potential as human being, that is self actualization. Maslow also said, self actualization may loosely be described as the full use and exploitation of talents. Whatever talents you have, use them, exploiting them is one important aspect. Talents, capabilities and potentials that you have, fully use them and exploring them is an important aspect of self actualization. Such people seem to be fulfilling themselves and be doing the best that they are capable of doing. So, they do best what they are capable of doing. Further, the idea of self actualization is not a static thing, that you suddenly achieve self actualization and this is the end and full stop. It does not work like that. It is an ongoing process and people keep on discovering themselves. So, this is a kind of ongoing process in which one's capabilities are fully, creatively and joyfully utilized, and it keeps growing. Maslow very interestingly said, in this paragraph, how he defined self actualization, and it connotes this idea very beautifully. He said, a musician must make music, an artist must paint, a poet must write, if he is to be ultimately at peace with himself. What a man can be, he must be. This need we may call self actualization. This tendency might be phrased as the desire to become more and more what one is, to become everything that one is capable of becoming. So, he very beautifully summarized the idea of self actualization in this paragraph. So, according to them, whatever potential you have, whether you are a painter, you are an artist, or you are a mathematician, academician, whatever it is, or a carpenter, whatever it is, if you have those potential, you should express those potential to be at peace with yourself, to experience sense of well-being. If you have certain potentials, that has to be expressed, and that is the way to achieve well-being, particularly Eudaimanic concept of well-being. What you can be, you should be. So, that is the idea. Whatever the potential you have, you should try to actualize those potential. This he called as self actualization. So, to become everything that one is capable of becoming. So, this is the highest level of need that human being should proceed to follow in order to find true sense of well-being, or to get in peace with oneself. So, according to Maslow, self-actualization need is a growth or being need. So, this is a kind of need to grow in life, to expand in life, and it is a being need. So, because this need comes from within us, from the being. All the other needs, as we have already discussed, are deficit needs. The basic idea of this is that all the other lower need arises from lack of or deficit of something from the environment, whereas the need for self-actualization don't come from any specific lack of something, but the desire to grow as a person. So, it is this need is not coming from lack of something, but it is a desire to grow and expand. That is the meaning of self-actualization. Generally, research shows, what Abraham also kind of found out, is that people with self-actualization need are more concerned with their growth and less concerned with the opinions of others. They enjoy autonomy and are less susceptible to social pressure to fit in. What he found that by studying many people whom he whom he kind of assumed that they have highly self-actualized individuals in various fields. He studied biography of people who have achieved highest potentials in their life, such as Albert Einstein, William James. So, he studied their biographies and found that the people who largely self-actualized, to large extent self-actualized, are the people who follow their intrinsic desires and inner motivations. So, they have a sense of autonomy. So, they are less influenced by outside pressure. So, if you are influenced too much by the outside pressures, you will not be able to get in touch with your self-actualization need, because you will be running behind fulfilling outside pressures and need, which may not be in sync with your self-actualization need. So, therefore, such people he found they have a very strong sense of autonomy and are less susceptible to social pressure to fit in. So, they are not so strongly desirous to just fit in the society and do what all the other people are doing. So, they have this sense of autonomy. This is what he found. So, according to Maslow, what is the obstacle in achieving self-actualization? Very few people actually reach the stage of self-actualization. Very few people, according to Maslow, very less number of people actually reach to the stage of self-actualization. And why this is the case? So, Maslow said the primary reason is that that each level of need must be taken care before the next one can be met. So, according to that, we have so many other needs. We need to fulfill those lower needs first before we can actualize or we work towards self-actualization. So, fulfilling one's physiological need is a prerequisite for safety needs being met. One's safety need must be met before one's love and love needs taken priority, and so on. So, like that you need to fulfill first the basic needs in order to work towards the higher needs. So, this is the one of the major obstacle is that self-actualization is at the highest level, meaning that it can only be fulfilled when one's physiological safety, love and esteem needs are already met, or to large extent they are fulfilled. So, most of the people are stuck in some of the lower needs, either in the physiological needs, safety needs, or esteem needs, or love and belongingness needs. So, most of the people are stuck in lower needs. So, that is why they are not able to work towards the highest need or self-actualization need. So, the idea is that if we are stuck in fulfilling lower needs, particularly physiological and safety needs, we will be spending all our time and energy at that level only, without thinking about higher needs. So, it makes sense to some extent also, because if you are continuously thinking about earning your bread only, because somebody who is not able to earn his the basic requirements of life of let us say having 2 meals, if somebody is not able to fulfill that, how can you expect him to work towards self-actualization? So, that is the idea that most of the people are stuck in their lower needs, therefore, they are not able to work towards self-actualization. So, that is the obstacle. However, later research shows that in many exceptional cases, this need hierarchy is not so rigid, like you have to fulfill basic need first and then go to the higher needs. In many cases, there can be flexibility in this order of needs. Somebody without fulfilling lower needs can also work towards higher needs. For example, somebody risk his safety needs and physiological needs and remaining hungry and even allowing the threat to his life. Somebody may work towards higher missions of life. We have seen so many people who risk their life, who risk their basic physiological need and work towards some higher goals of achievement, which may be related to social welfare and other things. So, in those cases we can see they are neglecting their lower needs and directly working toward their higher needs of self-actualization. So, it is possible in many cases, but maybe to a large extent people follow this order, that they need to fulfill those basic needs in order to work towards self-actualization, but there can be exceptions and flexibility in it also. So, this is the idea of self-actualization in the Maslow's theory. Now, we will talk about the idea of self-actualization from another theory of humanistic psychology called Carl Rogers' theory. So, this self-actualization idea is very much inherent in the humanistic psychology. However, the conceptualization could be little different from theory to theory. For example, Carl Rogers conceptualized self-actualization as little bit differently from what Maslow's conceptualization. So, according to Carl Rogers, all organisms are motivated by a single force of life, which he called as actualizing tendency. So, according to him, self-actualizing tendency is kind of fundamental motivation. It is a meta need, that is meta needs means it kinds of expresses itself in all the other needs, and it is a fundamental need that is found among all organisms, not just human being. Even a plant is trying to self-actualize itself, all animals are trying to self-actualize, not just human being. So, it is a single force of life that is present among all organisms, and he defined it as a built-in motivation present in every life form to develop its potential to the fullest extent possible. So, every organisms are trying to make best use of their life to actualize all their potential to the full extent. This motivation is there among all the organisms. So, in that sense he called it as a kind of basic fundamental meta need that is there in all organisms. So, Maslow kinds of look at self-actualization as at the topmost need. Rogers' conceptualization is little bit different in a sense that he conceptualized self-actualization need as a basic need, and all the other needs are an expression of this need actually. For example, what he said, that all organisms not only try to survive, but strive to make best use of their existence. So, that making best use of your existence is self-actualization need. This desire is due to actualizing tendency. One may fail to do so despite this desire. This desire is there, but one may not actually achieve that because of many obstacles. So, Rogers further said that he tried to capture and explain all other motives such as physiological needs of food, shelter, other needs like safety needs, need for love, self-esteem, etc. All these other needs are actually an expression of actualizing need itself. Why do you want food? Why do you want shelter? Why do you want love? Why do you want esteem needs? It is primarily because you want to make best use of their life, to flower in your life. So, ultimately it is an expression of self-actualization need itself. So, using this meta need or motive to actualize tendency, we seek food, shelter, relationship, competence, etc. to make very best of our existence, which is actualizing tendency. So, the conceptualization is little different. According to Rogers, self-actualization tendency is more fundamental, and it is the single force in life present in all organisms, and it is expressed when we seek or when we try to fulfill any other need also. So, it is an expression of all the needs. According to Rogers, people, however, in the course of actualizing their potential, everybody is trying to actualize their potential. However, in the process of that actualization, we created society and culture, which itself is an expression of actually that actualizing tendency, which itself has no problem. But in a long run, this society and culture which we develop, it develops life of its own, and many times it turn out of sync with actualizing tendencies of many people. So, we created society and culture initially as an expression of self-actualizing tendency, but in a long run this society and culture, that external world that we have created, it kinds of develop its own life with own set of rules and regulations, own sets of conditions, and many times this structure, social structure, may not be in sync with actualizing tendency of many people who are part of this society and culture. So, we initially develop society and culture for actualizing tendency, but in a long run they develop their own life and may get out of sync with many people in terms of actualizing self-actualization. need for self-actualization. This is where create certain obstacles, and we will see the process of that obstacle, how it creates obstacle in actualizing tendencies. So, this societal conditioning or outside pressures and rules and regulations, they create some, Rogers called something called as ideal self, which is different from our actual or real self. And this difference between real and actual self is causing a lot of problems in terms of psychological, in terms of psychological neuroses and other problems. So, basically it reduces your well-being. How it does? Let us see. So, Rogers divided self concepts into two categories. One is he called as ideal self and another he called as real self. So, we have two broad sense of self, one is real self, one is ideal self. The ideal self is the person that one would like to be, or what I should become, and the real self is the person who you actually are in reality. So, this is the difference. Rogers focused on the idea that we need to achieve consistency between these two selves. There has to be consistency between these two selves. So, the gap between this real self and the ideal self should be less to experience mental well-being. The inconsistencies between the real and the ideal self create sufferings and neurosis. So, Rogers was a very popular psychotherapist, and he could observe that many people develop many psychological issues primarily because of this inconsistency between their real self and the ideal self. How it develops, we will see a little bit in more detail. The inconsistency is created especially when we form an ideal self based on societal conditionings that are out of sync with one's actualizing tendencies. So, this gap is created primarily by societal conditionings, and especially when you try to fulfill certain societal conditions which are not in sync with your actualizing tendency. You try to do something which is not intrinsic to your actualizing tendencies, and you end up being an ideal self, not the real self. So, let us see how this happens according to Rogers. So, Rogers says, the process is like this. So, actualization or actualizing tendency lead to something he called as organismic valley. Which leads to, so organismic belonging is basically ability to know what is good positive regard. Positive regard basically includes the idea of love, affection, etc. Positive regard leads to positive self regard. Which is about self esteem, positive self image, this positive self regard ultimately leads to our real self. Now, this is one pathways. So, if you follow our actualizing tendencies, we will end up in real self, the actual self that we are at the core of ourself. So, if you follow our actualizing tendency, we will have something called as, we all have a sense of something called as organismic valuing. What is the meaning of organismic valuing is that every organism has a natural sense to understand what is good for them. For example, it can be very easily seen in animals that animals will eat only the right kind of things that is good for them. So, if you, just put in any animals, it could be cow or any other animals, they will only choose the right kind of food that will nourish them. So, this is the idea called as organismic valuing, means every organism knows what is good for them because it comes from their actualizing tendencies. So, they will be inclined to do things or choose things which is naturally good for them. So, this natural sense is called as organismic valuing. Now, if while doing things which are in touch with actualizing tendency and organismic valuing, we get positive regard, that is love and affection from other people, that there are no issues, people accept us when we are doing things in touch with our self-actualization tendency, whatever we are doing. Anything, let us say, I love to paint and I am doing painting and proceeding in a career with painting, and everybody accepts it around me and give love and affection. So, if after following organismic valuing I get positive regard from other people in terms of love and affection, I will naturally end up having positive self regard. So, I will have good self esteem or I will have positive self image because I am getting love and affection from other people. Then naturally we will end up our real self. I will be happy with the way I am. There will not be any issues and neuroses and the conflicts in my mind. I am in touch with my actualizing tendency and I am expressing it and people are accepting it, and therefore, I am experiencing my real self the way I am made up or whatever, intrinsically whatever is whatever I feel like expressing, I am expressing that. So, you will end up having real self. However, what happens, Maslow says, in the process of this whole self-actualization process, we created society. That creates sometimes problem. So, we created society which will kind of constantly interact with actualization tendencies. Society which has its own rules and regulation, own set of conditions, and you will be accepted when you follow certain rules, certain conditions. So, every society has their own set of rules. So, society has something called as conditions of worth. Which is constantly interacting with organismic valuing. Condition of worth means basically means getting what we need when we fulfill societal conditions. So, to feel worthy, we need to fulfill certain criteria, only then we feel sense of worthiness when we live in a society or in a culture, because there are many written and unwritten rules which needs to be followed, which if you follow them, then you will be accepted. This condition of words leads to something called as conditional positive regard. So, conditional positive regard is basically getting love and affection when you fulfill certain conditions. So, it is very simply means in society, when we behave or when we function in a society, there are so many conditions and criteria. For example, very simple example which is very commonly can be seen in our societies, particularly in the Indian societies, that every parents have their idea that certain professions their children should follow certain professions. It could be medical or engineering, because it is accepted in the society that these professions are elite professions and every children should pursue those professions. And if they get into those professions, everybody in the society appreciates them, give them love and affection. Parents become very happy, they give lot of love and affection to their kids if they get into those professions, simply because it is accepted in the society these are elite professions. And so many people are forced to go into those directions, and it may not be in touch with actualizing tendency of many students. They may not express or they may not intrinsically feel in tune with those kind of careers or professions, but they are simply going towards it because of the pressures created by the society, because it is accepted in the society, or kind of there is an expectation that these are more kind of elite professions, and if you go into that you will get more love, respect and affection. So people kind of bend into those expectations and bend to the demands of these expectations, and many times choose those things, and in that process they neglect their actualizing tendency, where they may be more better, or in terms of actualizing tendency they may be better at doing other things. It could be creative things like music, art, whatever it is, but simply they are kind of getting disrupted from those actualizing tendencies simply because to fulfill those societal expectations. So this is an example of conditional positive regard, where you get love and affection when you fulfill certain conditions. So there are many written and unwritten rules which people pick up from the society. Society basically includes your parents, your friends, your teachers, your peer groups, all are included in our society. All are creating many demands on us, and when we neglect our actualizing tendency and fulfill those demands to get love and affection from others, then it is called as conditional positive regard. Now, this conditional positive regard leads to conditional positive self regard. So, it is self regard, but it is conditional. So, then you also start accepting yourself or having a positive image only when others accept you or others give you love and affection. So, it becomes very conditional, your self esteem becomes dependent on others accepting you or giving you love and respect. So, it kind of become conditional in that sense. So, since this conditional positive regard is a very strong force, we all want to get love and affection from other people, particularly close people around us, that many time we are forced to do many things which may not be in touch with actualizing tendencies. It may not be true for everybody, but in many cases this may be the case for many people. So, this conditional positive self regard ultimately leads to our ideal self. Self which is projected by outside forces, and when we follow those projections we end up having an ideal self, a self which is expected by others, or it is an ideal self, or what I should be according to the others projection, I end up having an ideal self. So, there can be gap between your actual self which you achieve when you follow your actualizing tendency, and ideal self when you follow the external pressures and demands from the society and the culture, then you end up having ideal self. And the difference between them creates neurosis or mental instability or lack of well-being. So, this incongruence between these two creates neurosis, means instability, emotional problems, etc. Neurosis. So, this is the process that Roger said this is how many times societal conditioning can create an obstacle in achieving our real self, and we end up having ideal self which if the gap is very high between them, then we are bound to feel unstable, we are bound to have many emotional problems, and there will be lack of well-being also. So, this is the process which Rogers explained. So, according to Rogers, how to promote this self-actualization? How can we promote this self-actualization? So, Rogers said, in order to promote this self-actualization, we need certain kind of environment. An environment which provides these three important things. One is genuineness, that openness and self-disclosure. You are able to experience genuinely whatever you are able to express yourself. There is an openness, you are able to disclose yourself. If an environment provides sense of genuineness and people are also accepting you, then this is one important condition that will promote your self-actualization, or you will help you to get in touch with self-actualization. Second is unconditional positive regard and acceptance, which is very important. If people in your environment gives you unconditional positive regard, they accept you the way you are, and they don't put too much conditions to be accepted. They will not say like, if you do this, then only I will love you and accept you. If those conditions are less, if you have more unconditional positive regard from other people around you, it will help you to promote or get in touch with your self-actualization tendency, and you will achieve your real self in much more better way. So, if your environment provides unconditional positive regard and acceptance, this is very conducive for self-actualization. And the third is empathy. Empathy is basically if you experience being listened and understood by other people, if people show empathy around you, it will also promote self-actualization. And Rogers said these are like nutrition for our mind. So, without these qualities, which he called them psychological nutrition, if these are present in our environment, they will act like nutrition and promote our well-being. Without this, a relationship and healthy personalities will not develop as they should. Much like a tree will not grow without sunlight and water. So, just for example, for growing a tree we need sunlight and water. For growing a human personality, for their psychological growth, these nutritions are required. Genuineness, unconditional positive regard and empathy. So, these are important for relationship also. So, if in a relationship, if people show this sense of genuineness, they accept people the way they are, and also they are authentic, not fake. They show unconditional positive regard in the sense they may say, okay, this behavior was not good and you should do like that. Advices are okay, but at the core you accept the person as it is. So, that is the meaning of unconditional positive regard. You may give advice, but you accept the person. So, that is the meaning of unconditional positive regard, and you have a sense of empathy, that you understand, try to listen to that person. If these ingredients are there in your relationship also, your relationship will also flourish. So, these are good for individual growth, relationship, and also these are important ingredient in psychotherapies. In a therapeutic situation where a therapist show these qualities, what Rogers found, that if this kind of environment is provided in a therapeutic situation, many clients who are suffering with emotional issues, they automatically heal those things without really giving too much of technical techniques and methods to come out of their suffering. This environment of loving environment itself heals lot of problems of the people. So, these are some of the ideas related to self-actualization. We try to understand self-actualization from Maslow's theory as well as Carl Rogers' theory, and we have discussed what are the obstacles in it and how can we overcome that. With this, I will end today's lecture. Thank you.